Pnawn da, a chroeso i'r drwm a'r Llyfrgell Genedlaethol Cymru. Good afternoon and welcome to the drum, and thank you all for coming to the library for this talk today. Enw i yw'r Rhodri Ap Dyfrig, a fi di'r pennaeth marchnata a chynulleidfaoedd yn y Llyfrgell. My name is Rhodri Ap Dyfrig, and I'm the head of marketing and audiences at the library. Felly croeso i bawb i'r digwyddiad, a diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am ymuno efo ni mewn person ac ar-lein heddiw ar ddiwrnod chwedlau'r byd. Mae'n ddathliad byd-eang o'r grefft o adrodd straeon, ac lle mae straeon yn cael ei rhannu ar draws y byd, a traddodiad llafar cenedloedd gwahanol yn cael ei cadw yn fyw. A dwi'n meddwl bod Llyfrgell Genedlaethol di'r lle perffaith ar gyfer y dathliad hwn. Gan o fewn y muriau yma, mae'r llawysgrifau cynharaf sy'n cofnodi'n diwylliant llafar ni a baswyd lawr ers canrifoedd. Ac yma, da ni'n gwarchod ac yn rhannu'r straeon sy'n creu cenedl ac yn tanio dychymyg pobl. So welcome everyone online and in person to this event today. Thank you all for coming on World Storytelling Day. And it's a global celebration of the art of storytelling, where stories are shared across the world and oral traditions are kept alive. The library, I think, is the perfect place to celebrate this, as within these walls, we have the earliest manuscripts of our oral culture, passed down centuries prior. And here we protect and share the stories that create a nation and ignite the imagination of a people. So, this is why I'm so looking forward to today's event, where our storyteller, Russ Williams, joins us to discuss his search for places associated with Wales's legends, folklore and urban myths. Delving into the stories behind the myths, Russ will look at how they might have come about and ask us, what do they tell us about Wales, our past and our present? So Russ was raised in Caernarfon and now lives in Cardiff and has published several short stories. He's a member of Cardiff-based writing group Wrth Writers and has 2 active blogs, Brawd Autistico, which documents his life with an autistic brother, and Where the Folk, of which you'll be hearing more today. Last year saw the release of his first book, Where the Folk, copies of which are available to buy after the event, so please support. Felly, dyna ni y cyflwyniad byr, that's all from me. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi, ac na i drosglwyddo i Russ i roed i gyflwyniad. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Well, I'll have to skip a slide now. You've done the introduction bit. But thank you all for coming, especially the first warm sunny day we've had for a while. Plenty of time to enjoy it, don't worry. So my name's Russ Williams. This is my book, Where the Folk. I wasn't going to talk much about the cover, but they told me I've got a pointer, so I'm going to make use of it. So this is the cover, and it was designed by a man called Johnny Hanna, and he designs a lot of posters and album covers for punk bands and that sort of thing. So each of these stories. So when I initially got it, I was thinking, what are some of these? And what he's done is combined elements of the stories into one image. So if you've got, I hope you're not too shy, but if I go through these, if you could, do you mind shouting out if you recognise any? If I use my pointer, yeah. So what about this one here? We've got a dog and a wolf and a baby. There's girl, that's pretty straightforward. Sure everyone recognises her? Mary Lloyd. It might not be clear here, but we've got a hand sticking out of water and it's got a tattoo of a white cow on it. Lady of the Lake, yeah, that's right. Because it'll be an easy presentation. What about this lady here? You've got a thunderbolt here, there's lightning, and there's a skeleton in a tree. Yeah, that's right, Rhys and Maynard, yeah, that's right. Up north. You locals should know this one. Oh, you've got a bridge with a dog. The Devil's Bridge, that's right. This one might be a bit tricky. So it's a castle, and I'll give you a hope, because you can't really tell what that is. That's an ape. It's a monkey. A bottom marmite. Yeah, no, that one. So that's Castell Carew in Pembrokeshire. Yeah, said to be haunted by the ghost of a killer ape. Interesting. A lady riding a white horse. Rhiannon. This one I thought was very tricky. The different symbolisms are basically, think this is a real person. It's not a story, but some of his exploits are legendary. No, he's from, raised in Caerphilly, but this famous event happened in Cantrisant where he tried to cremate, he proclaimed himself as an archdruid, and he tried to cremate his son and created a lot of Dr. William Price, that's right. God, I'm under pressure now, you're all very well informed. We got a Welsh lady hat and a pitchfork. Do you mind that? Not going to lie, one of those dragons should be white. Yeah, you know that one? We'll get to that one. This one I found really tricky. So you've got a giant crossing an ocean, but with a bird's head. Bendigate ran it, that's right. And last one, a lady with flowers all over her face. Well, there you have, okay. I'm significantly more nervous now after doing that with you. So, yes, Roger gave you a bit of an introduction. My name's Russ. I grew up in Welsh-speaking Caernarfon, but I've lived down in Cardiff for a few years now. Like most people from up north, I went down for education and stayed for the extracurricular. And like most great adventures, mine started with the hero looking for something to do. Basically, so what happened, lockdown came in, and I found myself, and I enjoy going for walks, so all of a sudden I found myself that I can only go 10 miles away. Where can I go? And I stumbled, I actually walked past Clwb Ifor Bach nightclub in Cardiff, and I read up on who is Ifor Bach, and there was all these legends about him, and I told a couple of my friends, and I said, I might start going to the locations where these tales took place. And so many of my friends said, Russ, I'm Welsh, I should know these tales, but I don't. So I thought, right, so that's how we started. I started a blog, and in my opinion, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the books I came across were either very academic or for children, when it came to folk tales. So I thought I'm going to go for those in between, those who have an interest, but they don't want to be too whimsical about it. So I came up with Where the Folk. Be very careful how you spell that. So every blog post was, where the folk can I find two dragons? Where the folk can I find this? And yes, for a very long time, my mum was the only one sending me likes and shares. She's in the audience, by the way, so be nice to me today. Okay. And then, when it came, basically, as soon as my girlfriend's mum started giving me likes as well, I thought I was kicking off. So I emailed a few publishers and asked, do you think this could be a book, a travel book? And Calon, imprint of University of Wales Press, agreed with me. But I didn't have a book at that point. I just had an idea for a book. So off I went. They told me, yes, do this for us, Russ, but we would like a fairly equal coverage of Wales. So off I went. I had a year to write it. Off I went to my Ford Fiesta. Everyone, I mentioned this very briefly. I mentioned my creaky red Fiesta, and every event I go to, these question is always asked, is the Fiesta still going? So it is. And when I was thinking, right, which story should I include? So, we had some of the big ones. Obviously, the Mabinogion, I thought, right, they need to be there. Got Santes Nwyn, patron saint of love. So I know there was a lot of these things I needed to include, but I also wanted to include some hidden gems, like the ghost of the killer ape, for example. So yeah, there's 32 locations, but what I often found, we go somewhere for one thing, and there's 3 or 4 stories there. So yeah, there's more than 32 stories. But what I did, I kind of fell into a bit of a rabbit hole as I went along. So it's supposed to be very simple. I'll take you to where the story took place. But the more I got into them, I realized, God, there's so many similarities with these stories and crossovers. And not just within Wales, but stories from other countries as well. And then there were, some things that were a bit, kind of suspicious. And I thought, well, surely that might have been based on something true then. So, for example, you've got a rafanc, a giant lake monster. Clearly, obviously wasn't true, but the Welsh, afanc is the Welsh word for beaver. And you do wonder, okay, this monster that was drowning villages, there were beavers in Wales back in the day. So anyway, but I fell down a rabbit hole. And I did find, ultimately, you'll never find their true origins, but you can certainly trace them back and learn a lot more about them than you thought. But I picked out 4 for you today, because what they were saying at the start, the theme of this event is the craft of storytelling and how stories are spread. So I've picked 4 stories that really highlight this, and I'll tell you one thing I learned doing this book is a lot of the Welsh tales, what I consider Welsh tales, they weren't Welsh at all. Yeah, they were brought here, and a couple of them purely for tourism. Which brings me to... So you all recognise Beddw Gelert? Mostly know the story because you recognised it, yeah? So yes, I worked in Beddw Gelert for many years, like a lot of people from the Caernarfon area. It's great if for cheap teenage labour. It's great for that. So I spent many years here, so this story is very dear to me. And what I like about the story of Beddw Gelert is that it's a great folktale because it's short and sweet and there's a moral behind it, isn't it? Yeah, so you've got the prince, for those who don't know it, you've got the prince who lives at home with his baby son, who goes out hunting one day, leaves the son at home with his faithful dog, Gelert. And when he returns, the whole house is a mess, there's blood everywhere, and he can't find his son. But he does see Gelert with blood all over his mouth. So he's, oh God, what have you done? So he takes him outside, kills him, and just after he kills him, he can hear his son crying. And then he spots the body of a wolf in the far corner, and he goes, what have I done? So, yes, the Gelert, the martyred hound. I always thought with that's the ultimate man look, isn't it? When you look, you can't see the body of a wolf in in the kitchen. So yeah, but it's short and sweet. The moral's quite, straightforward. Don't jump to conclusions. Yeah, don't act with your emotions. They're all there. But it's no secret that in Beddw Gelert, well, it's no secret, but they don't exactly broadcast it, that it didn't actually happen there. So what happened in Beddw Gelert in the 1700s, the landlord of the Goat Hotel, David Pritchard, there wasn't much going on in Beddw Gelert at that time. So he thought, how can we draw the tourists in? And he'd heard the tale from Europe, in France. I can't remember where in France, but there's a story about a French prince. Exactly the same story. And he said, right, let's put a slab in the field and tell them it happened here. Yeah. And it worked, and it still works, and it's still drawing in the crowd. But I was under the impression, they changed the name of the village then to Beddw Gelert, Gelert's grave, for that story. But it turns out it was actually already called Beddw Gelert. And Gelert, there's a saint called Gelert, believed to be buried in the area. So I found that was interesting. But as I looked further into this story, I realised this story, the French story, that's only the tip of the iceberg. So this story, you'll find it all over Europe. The breed of the dog changes, depends where you are. You've got a German Shepherd in Austria. Yeah, that kind of thing. But it goes even further. And in fact, one of the oldest kind of versions of this tale. It comes from India. And yeah, hundreds of years before that. And it involves a mongoose who protects the family from a cobra. And it's similar, but not exactly the same. So what happens there? You've got a man and a wife, and we have a pet mongoose, and the man goes out begging, and the wife stays at home, and while she's busy cooking or cleaning, whatever she was up to, the mongoose kind of saw this cobra and killed it, and it was covered in blood, and he ran back to the wife to kind of, show her. And she thought that he turned, that was going for her. So she went, I dropped the pot on it and killed it. And the husband came over and said, what happened? And she said, well, it's your fault for going out begging when you should have been at home with me. So make what you want what the moral of that one is. Yeah, it's always our fault, I think. So that's, and David Pritchard, the landlord, his story doesn't end there. There's actually a story after he died. A lot of the locals said that they saw his ghost wandering the village. And there was a man called Hugh who worked in the Goat Hotel. And he said, enough of this. I don't want to be too scared to go to the pub every night. So I'll just go and ask him what's up. And he did, and he went up to the ghost of David Pritchard and asked him, why are you still here? And he said, I forgot to tell my wife where I stashed all the money we made with the Bergellet thing. So he said, if you can tell her it's buried and a brick by the fireplace, then I'll go happily to my grave. And that's what he did. And he said, if you do that, you can keep half of it, by the way. And they say that even today, every time the sound of the till goes in the goat, they can see the goat with a smile. A ghost with a smile on his face. Yeah. So that was, So I think, I started with this one because I knew it, and I thought it would be straightforward enough. But as you can see, it's already really open. I opened Pandora's box. I made a mistake of telling Callon. I'll figure out where these stories are from. But, so on the subject of telling stories, we'll go now to when we don't get it right, and we tell stories wrong. Which is a weird thing to say, because one of the great things about folktales is, technically, you can get them wrong. They change all the time. One of the experts I interviewed for the book compared folktales to a virus. He says, think about it, they spread and they mutate. Yeah, with whoever carries it on. And I've been in a situation myself. You're talking to 100 people and you forget a detail and you quickly skip it or make something up, and think how many times that happened over hundreds of years. And also, in order to keep these stories alive, a lot of Welsh nobility would hire someone in the court whose only job was to tell these stories and to entertain the halls, but they were very close friends with the nobility. So you can imagine, they would try and make their ancestors look good, So, for example, the dream of Maxen starts out, Maxen was this wise emperor in Rome and everyone loved him. And if you look at the real history, he really wasn't. He was a traitor and he was killed, So, but a lot of Welsh princes descended from Maxen. So you can see how that spin could have been added in over time. But anyway, these days, the one that really breaks my heart, even before I started writing the book, was the one with the two dragons. So I used to work in a primary school in Cardiff. And they said, Russ, you're a Welsh speaker. And they said, can you tell the kids the story about why we got a red dragon as a flag? And he said, about the one when the Welsh dragon beats the English dragon, that one. And that's not how it goes at all. There is no English or Welsh dragon, no dragons are on our side at all. So the one everyone thinks about with this tale, Dinas Emrys, that is, just up the road from Beddgelert. You could easily missed, tiny little fort on top of the hill there. And the story goes that gor-wneud, you might know him as Vortigern, he was on the run. The Saxons were on their way. And he said, right, I need to build myself a tower in the hills while this blows over. And but every time he built it, the tower fell apart. I thought, what's going on? Now, instead of hiring a surveyor or something like that, he asked a few local sorcerers, what do I do about this? And he said, tell you what you need to do. You need to sacrifice a child whose mother is human and father is from the Welsh otherworld. I said, good luck with that. But they did have a child in mind. This little boy called Merlin, down in Carmarthen. So off they went, they got Merlin, poor young Merlin, and Merlin told them, that won't sort it out. And he said, no, your real issue is that there are two dragons locked in eternal battle underneath the hill. So, and there's a prophecy that says if the white dragon kills the red one, then the Saxons will successfully invade us. So Gwrthein, they released the dragons, and the white one flew off, never to be seen again, and the red one stayed behind in the hill. Prophecy still didn't work though, did it? They did invade. But that's where that confusion comes, you see, with the Welsh dragon and the English dragon beating them. So you can see that, minor detail, it's been simplified to the point now that most people go by the wrong version. What a lot of people don't realise as well is that was a sequel, if you will. So, and there's a story involving the red and white dragon in the Mabinogion. And this one, I'll give you the summary of this one, because it's one of the, like many of the Mabinogion tales, very long, complicated tale, but it concerns two brothers, Lly and Llefelys. So Lly was a king of the Britons, and according to the story, he's the one who founded London. And it was actually named after him. It was from Leoliadau, from Lly. And his brother, so he was the heroic leader, if you will, and his brother Llefelys was the wise one. And not long into Lly's reign, Britain was hit by 3 plagues, one of which there was a race of beings called the gor-wneud, who could hear, even from miles away, they could hear the smallest whisper. So it was impossible to conspire against them. So everyone was kind of living, a bit of an invasion of the body snatchers kind of situation. And then the second plague, there were 2 dragons. Well, the plague was, there were 2 terrible screams heard in the night sky. And they were so terrible that even women who were pregnant would miscarry if they heard them. But they didn't know what the screams were. And the third one, a bit less scary, was all Lly's food. No matter how many times they cooked and stuff, every time they woke up in the morning, all the food in the court was gone. So he asked his wise brother, Llefelys, for help, and Llefelys built this massive brass horn to deafen the gor-wneud so that they couldn't hear them. And he said, right, the gor-wneud, he said, they're allergic. There's this rare beetle in the UK, and they're allergic to it. So let's ground up some beetles, make some powder. We'll gather the gor-wneud together, and we'll chuck the powder all over them. And that's what they did. And they set up a meeting with the gor-wneud and did that to them, defeated the gor-wneud. He said, those terrible screams you hear are 2 dragons. There's a red and a white dragon fighting. And with them, we can't kill them. So we need to lock them up and sedate them. And what they did was they lured, and this bit's hilarious, they lured them in Oxford. They lured them with mead and beer, which obviously the dragons love. And the 2, they stopped their fighting for a pint. And fell asleep together in Oxford. This was down in Oxford. And while they were slumbering away, they chained them up and took them up to Eryri, so I should say now, and buried them under a hill, an unnamed hill. And then a couple of hundred years later, this story with Gwrthein came about. Then, so that's where you can also spread stories, but get it wrong as well. Ysbryd. Another poor dog. Dogs don't fare well in Welsh folklore at all. So here's another bed gelert for you here, pretty much. Devil's Bridge. Originally called Pontarmynach, I believe, which is ironic. So it's gone from the monks, the Bridge of Monks, to the Devil's Bridge. And if you read this story, honestly, there's a plaque there telling the story, and it reads like a Victorian tourist brochure, honestly. So the devil, it starts like this: the devil comes to Wales because he's heard of the wonderful scenery. And while he's wandering, he comes across an old lady crying next to a river called Megan. He said, "Oh, what's wrong?" I said, "Oh, I wish there was a bridge so I didn't have to walk miles every day just to get, to the market." So the devil said, I'll build you a bridge, and believe me, it'll be the best bridge you've ever seen. Definitely worth coming to see. And he said, but the deal is, I get the soul of the first living thing to cross to the other side. And Megan said, all right, fair enough. So Megan went home, the devil went off, busying himself. He used his magic and went all over Wales to collect the stones. And he was only stopped once when a monk was trying to preach to him about Christianity. And then the next day, the Megan knew, what am I going to do in the morning? Because, obviously, if I cross that bridge. So she thought, I'll take the dog with me. Yeah. So she took the dog with her to the bridge. The devil was there showing off. Look what I've done. Go on then. And she threw a treat across the bridge, and the dog ran across to get the treat. And the devil went, you got me. And off he went. And so he took the dog's soul and was never seen in Wales again. So you can see, for Victorians, that is, yes, it's very much a tourist brochure, that story. And a man, I hope I got the name right now. I'm pretty sure his name's John Evans, but I used to work with a landlord called John Evans, so I'm hoping I'm mixing him up. But the landlord of that hotel, there, the Havod Inn Hotel, very similar to Beddgelert. He thought there's nothing going on here. We need to draw people in. And he went on a skiing holiday to Switzerland. And that's where he got the idea for the design of the hotel there, the alpine look. And while he was there, he heard this story about someone who wanted to cross a river, and the devil built it for them. So he thought, that sounds great. And he came home, and just very much no big secret at all. They said, right, let's call this place Devil's Bridge from that one. And tell them that's what happened. And just like Beddgelert, I think without that folk tale, who knows if the village would even exist today, So you can see there's one question people ask me is, why should we bother keeping these stories alive? And I'll get to that in the end. To be honest, my opinion is we don't need to even try. They're staying alive naturally. They're good for the economy. If you want a simple kind of excuse. And later on, we mentioned the Lady of the Lake earlier. So talking about things going viral and stories spreading, the Lady of the Lake, I think, is the ultimate example. There's so many of them in Wales. I think the most famous would be Llyn Bach, Black Mountains, but this is Ferndale. It's Darren Park in Ferndale, this is. And all these stories, they all follow a similar narrative. So what happens, you've got a mortal man who comes across a beautiful tylwyth-teg, or a Lady of the Lake. So the tylwyth-teg, Welsh fairies, they were very much associated with bodies of water. And it's not just the Welsh, that's common with other cultures as well. And waters, lakes, rivers, they were considered to be areas where the tear between us and nhw'n, the Welsh otherworld, that's where the tear was thinnest, you see. So a lot of stories are based on bodies of water. So the tylwyth-teg, the ones that came from the lake, the ladies of the lake, they were also associated with white cattle for whatever reason. Very often when they came out, a herd of cattle came up with them, and they thought they're bringing them up to the human realm so that the cattle can graze before they go back. So anyway, this story, you've got a mortal man who comes across her, falls in love. And what happens, you've got that standard, three, the magic number 3. You know, so he has 3 goals at impressing her. And obviously gets it right the 3rd time. It's quite hilarious. In one of the versions, it's his mum's barra brief that does the job. He cooks her something, she's like, He cooks it, gives her some lava bread, she's like, nah. And then his mum's barra brief, and she's like, oh my gosh. But then, what happens then? She'll tell him, but this is the deal, she said. You've got 3 chances with me. Yeah? And what's interesting is you could really see this, the evidence of societal standards, if you will. So the earliest versions, she'll say, if you hit me 3 times, I leave you. Yeah? And he goes, obviously, that moral, you wouldn't be hearing that today, would you? Give him a 3rd go. No. And then as the years develop, they change from if you upset me 3 times or if you lie to me 3 times, yeah, whatever. It gets a bit more PC as time goes on. And then, for many of the stories, they're happily together for years and they have children. But eventually, things happen and he always messes up and off she goes back to the other world then. And what's interesting, a lot of the stories with tylwyth-teg, the tylwyth-teg, Welsh fairies they're not your fairy godmothers. Welsh tylwyth-teg, most of the stories about them involve them kidnapping children, and a lot of times it's quite interesting. Plant newid, so the changelings, Welsh versions are changelings. So people will say that, my child is totally normal, and then, about 3-4 years old, he stopped talking, and all this. And they would often blame, the real child was taken by the tylwyth-teg, and they replaced him with this changeling. And a lot of people, obviously, there's a lot of theories now going with, with stuff like, mental health issues or autism, that kind of thing. Was it people, not understanding that? But that's just, it's all a bit of theory there. But the interesting thing, these tylwyth-teg, the ones from the lakes, they're always the good guys. And it's the humans who mess things up. Yeah, so there's always, so the moral with these is a lot of the nature of man, if you will. So yes, I was on about them going viral. So like I said, these stories are all over Wales, and the only difference are the names of the characters or what he does, to her 3 times, or how he impresses her. But it's all the same story. And that's the nature of folk tales. Like I said, people just tell the stories, and then someone, they'll go to, village 20 miles away, and, have you heard this one? But what people did was they would change them to make them up, personalise them to the people they knew. So if you're in the local pub, you'd be saying, did I tell you time Di, found that lady by the lake, and all these stories change. Yeah. So as you can see, the nature of storytelling is very evident in our folk tales. You think by nature, of course, folk tales, spread oral tradition, but if you really pick them apart, you'll realise just how far they did spread. And while we're on tylwyth-teg, the Russians have a very similar thing. They call them the wild women of the woods. And very similar. Guess with a man, he has 3 goes, messes it up, and she's often found near bodies of water. So these, like I said, they're all common traits. And this book, has anyone read Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces? Or heard of it? No? So Joseph Campbell, his book came out in the 40s, and Joseph Campbell researched all the religions and mythologies from all over the world, and he found all these similarities. And he says you can basically break down every story in the world into these 17 stages, he said. Some of them might not have all 17, but in general, this is how they go, So it'll be, the chosen one, often in a boring, mundane situation. You got Cinderella working as a servant. You've got someone special in a boring or bad situation, basically. And then you've got the wise figure who finds them and tells them, actually, you're not an average person, And then you've got help from the divine, where a god will say, you need this sword for your quest. So you've got all these stages. And one thing Joseph Campbell said about folk tales and mythologies was, what's great about them, he said, is that they don't tell you anything about your culture. That, you know, it's not about your culture or your people or your language or your beliefs or anything. All of these stories, the reason they're so universal and so many cultures have adopted them is because they are stories about you, the individuals. Because most of these heroes are just out trying to impress their parents, yeah, or find a loved one, or, you know, work their way out of poverty, whatever. And all these monsters and everything in between, they're just, yeah, all they represent are, you know, the morals and tough choices you'll come across in real life. Yeah, and I think that's why I think this universal. And which brings me to, you know, the future of these tales. People often ask me, like I said, how important is it to keep these alive for us? And they also ask, do people still tell stories? You know, this oral tradition, does that still exist? Obviously, I'm an exception because I'm an author, right? So I'm doing it. But I say to them, yes, but what's happened is we have different platforms these days. So, okay, fair enough. We're not sat around the living room telling stories in the evenings. But these stories do exist in books, TV, films, whatever. Yeah. And also, new ones are coming up today. And exactly the way they form was exactly the same. As famous as an example of an urban myth in America in the 1960s. There was a small town and everyone was saying, oh, don't go out in the night. Or, you know, Crooked Pete, I think it was called, will get you, you know. And there's a story about a disfigured ghost. And for the best part of 20 years, this urban myth existed. And then they ultimately found out there was a deformed person walking the streets in the night. He was too ashamed to go out in the day. And people had seen him. And there was this urban myth. And people had taken that and came up with their own origin story for the ghost. You know, podcasts, whatever. And that spread. And then people had never even been there. Oh, have you heard the story about Crooked Pete the ghost? And he was killed, you know, because he used to be this bad guy. Now his ghost is out for revenge and all this. So yes, not a lot has changed. They're still here, and there's new ones being born all the time. And one thing I'm really bad at is keeping an eye on the time, but I'm pretty sure I hit 40 minutes. But I could tell you a couple of tales if you'd like, or if someone has questions, yeah, I can freestyle. You're a story, is it? What about the one with the monk, the ghost ape? That one, yeah. So what happened there? Right, Castell Carew, the 1700s. There was the patron of a castle at the time, Lord Roland. He wasn't a very nice guy, by all accounts. But someone gifted him a Barbary ape that they had nicked off a Spanish galleon. But obviously, Lord Roland wasn't a very nice guy at all. So he'd keep this ape in a cage in a corner of his room, and he'd throw things at him and, you know, poke him, you know. So this ape was fuming the whole time. And then what happened one day is Sir Roland's son fell in love with a local girl who wasn't of the same class, shall we say. So but you know, he opposed the marriage. But the girl's dad went over to him, to the castle, and said, can we talk this out? You know, we don't need to be violent, you know, let's find a solution here. So Sir Roland invited him up to his room, only to release the ape on him, and to tell, you know, to kill him. But the ape didn't go for him, did he? The ape went, yeah. And he went straight for Roland. And the other guy legged it, of course, and told the servants, someone needs to go check on him. But no one liked him. So the servants, no one rushed. They thought, give it a minute. And when they went up to check, there he was, dead in a pool of blood. And the ape was nowhere to be found. And the story goes that on a cold, dark, stormy night, you can hear the shrieking of the ape in the halls. There's nothing to do with wind blowing through, you know, the halls, I'm sure. But yes, so that was that. I knew that one had to be in the book when I came across that one. But there's another story, Castell Carew, actually. Anyone heard of Princess Nest? Yeah. So she was, she was a real person. There's a bit of, apparently her ghost haunts the castle. So she was apparently the most beautiful Welsh princess that had ever been. But, you know, like most women back then, she was forced to marry someone she didn't love. And then, you know, she ended up having... well, the story was, in real life now, her cousin raided the castle and kidnapped her. But apparently she did live quite happily with her cousin, and they had children. And then, yes, and that happened, so and then the cousin eventually died, she had kids with someone else. She was very renowned to be, for the time, they would have called her woke. You know, so she was very liberal, enjoyed having a good time, if you will. Yes, and apparently in her, like most women, she also died of a broken heart, eventually. Women had very weak hearts back then. Yeah. But yes, and now her spirit is set to haunt Castell Carew. But unlike the killer ape, she's very friendly. And we'll have to show you around. And that's what's strange. I love that about another example of similar stories being similar. So you've got her, and then you've got in Caerphilly as well. And I've got to get to Castell Coch because the lady in the back mentioned this. Caerphilly Castle, you've got the Green Lady who haunts there. And again, she was involved in a love triangle, if you will. So again, she was very woke, liberal, like having a good time. But her husband was a total warlord. You know, not like that at all. And then one day, Prince Charming walks into the court and she fell in love. And the two of them have an affair. But a local monk finds out about it and tells the Lord all about it. So the prince hung the monk off a tree for grassing him up. And then the Lord eventually catches up with him and does the same to him. So they were both strung up from a tree. Now the princess, at the time, she was over in France when all this was going on. But when news reached her, of course, she died of a broken heart. But her spirit is like Princess Nest. The Nest didn't die in this country as well. She was off somewhere, but her spirit came back. Yeah, to her castle. So there's similarities there. A lady in the back asked me if I cover Castell Coch earlier. I do, but for Ifor Bach, because there's there was a myth that he built Castell Coch, but he didn't. But again, there's a white lady there, and exactly the same. Love triangle, died somewhere else, came back, and she's very nice. Yeah. So again, all these stories, they would have been Norman. You know, all those stories have in common are the Normans. So you can see there more evidence of where these stories have come from. Yeah. Okay. Any questions or anything? No. Ready? Time's up, is it? All right. He did tell you he'll give you a cough like on Horse Be a Millionaire when your time's up. All right. Yeah. And all this, and one of the great feedbacks I've had from an event is someone came up to me and said, "Oh, Russ, that was like listening to a mate tell a story in a pub, but about the time he had a fight with a dragon." You know? And I was like, yes. I like that. Yeah.
So I've got a quick question. What's your origin story, and what's the interest, and where did all this come from, you know? And, you know, how did you really come about this interest in folk tales?
I think, you know, when I was growing up, I was always a very boyish interest in stuff like the Greek myth, certainly. And I think I was born at a time, right, the 90s, so you had Hercules came out, Disney, yeah? So there was a lot of interest in my age group, I think, especially particularly the Greek myths. And I used to love, you know, those old films, Sinbad and Jason and the Argonaut. Fantastic. So I always had that kind of boyish interest, you know. But also in school, I was lucky enough, in primary school, we were actually told some of these tales as well, you know. I mean, they did tell me the Welsh dragon beat the English dragon, but still, they told us the tales. But, you know, for many years then, I've always been interested in writing in general, but I never really gave folktales, you know, a second thought, really. And like I said, it was lockdown when someone told me, you've only got 10 miles, you know, so pick somewhere to go. And and it just snowballed from there, basically. And honestly, I've learned so much. Like, I was quite arrogant, if you will, going in, because my whole point was, I'm going to, you know, educate the masses and save these tales. They don't need saving, you know, and I didn't know anything about it, basically. So it really is, what, you know, another good feedback I've had is, I feel like I'm going on this journey with you, Russ, and that's very much what it is. You know, I've started out, yes, with standard, you know, basic knowledge, but the more I learned, the more experts I interviewed, you know. Yeah, by the end of it, I was like, wow, you know, a year ago I've learned so much. Yeah.
And they're constantly being discovered and rediscovered. I think that's this thing with folktales as well, isn't it? You know, people discover them at different times in their lives and through different people that they meet. So
that's right, yes. And I was saying again, you know, also, and they're still being, you know, reimagined, because one of the, funnily enough, I didn't start, the reason I was researching folktales, I wanted to write a fiction book. I've never written non-fiction for this. And that's my brother there, guys, by the way. He's behaved, he's done great. Really good. So I didn't think, I had no interest in writing non-fiction. And I was studying these tales because I wanted to write a modern version of the Mabinogion, which a lot of people are rolling their eyes at. You know, it's been done, Russ, you know. But even the ones that were put into script in the 1200s were modernised versions, you know, because they'd already existed for years before that. And like I said, by then you'd have elements of propaganda thrown in, and also, you know, and once it very evident that they weren't the originals was in the story of Max and Ledig. It mentions a couple of characters playing chess. Chess hadn't been invented, you know, but it had been invented by the 1200s. So yeah, if you read between the lines, But like I said, yes, like you said, people reimagining them and rediscovering them. It's always happened, and that's what they're there for. I say that's the magic of folktales.
Any other questions from the audience?
The TV programme.
You know, the first to say that. But someone's got there before me. There's an English guy. He was on, I don't know the actor's name. He's in Pirates of the Caribbean. You know the one his eye keeps popping out? His character. He's not like that in real life. But yeah, that actor, I forgot his name. But he's got that basically, a documentary where he goes around to English folktale locations. So yeah, it's been done. But yeah, if you know any, you know, Welsh TV.
Knock on the door in ysbryd. Yeah. There's a question here.
Did you just sort of feel you've got to collect the stories, or did you deliberately try to put your own spin on them?
Well, I didn't change the narrative as such, but like I said, my audience were those people with general knowledge and interest, you know, but people who could have a fun as well. So I wrote them initially. I just wrote them, you know, fairly basic, and then as I was going over them, I basically just tried to sound like I was telling the story to someone, like that person said in a pub, you know. So I will throw a little bit of humour in and what have you. So yeah, so I didn't do a spin. But like I said, like I joked about not looking for a surveyor, you know, instead of a sorcerer, and so I tried to be very down to earth and a bit jokey in my approach, 100%. But again, you know, we were saying about the way folktales are spread. That would have happened, you know, hundreds of years ago. Everyone brought their personality in, and you can tell the same story and give the same message, but tell it in a completely different way. So the second branch of the Mabinogion, the story of Branwen, Byd the Geidran, it's about the war with the Irish, and the whole point is how awful war is, and how pointless it is, and how we kill each other for the sake of, you know, the nobility. People don't even know us or care for us, you know. So it's a very dark, serious message, and pretty much no one survives. The people who do survive end up committing suicide. because they're so traumatized by everything, you know. So there's no happy ending there, and the message is very clear. So you can tell that story in a very somber tone, yeah, and very serious. But you can also be a bit of a court jester about it, you know, and pick out, you know, show it through humour, tell people, look how silly it is. Yeah, but it's all the same.
Tools of the storyteller, aren't they? You know, to engage the audience and make them, you know, listen and kind of pick up on the details.
That's right. Yeah, because I did feel the first event I did, they had me on with someone else, and they full on. They had music and they had costumes and they were, you know, telling the stories. And then they went, "Now Russ is going to come," and I was like, "All right." But it went down a treat. So there's room for there's room for it. Yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
We've got a question from the Zoom. Are there many songs that are associated with the folk tales?
Songs? Yes. Fleetwood Mac, Rhiannon. Yeah, the most probably the favourite song. And it was interesting. So Stevie Nicks, she heard the tale about you know, Rhiannon and all of them really. She read the Mabinogion. No, she didn't. I think she watched a film, I think, that was based on the Mabinogion at the time. And she thought, oh, that was great. But, like I said, the film had put its own spin on it, you know, and Stevie Nicks was under the impression that Rhiannon was an evil witch. So she loved the character, loved the idea, but got a totally wrong, you know, impression. But she did another song, and I can't remember what it's called, but she's got 2 or 3 songs based on Rhiannon, you know. So the first one, when she got it wrong, basically, and then she read the Mabinogion, and realised, so she brought out there's one, I think it's something like Angel or something like that it's called, I don't know. I'd say that would be the most well-known. I don't know any others. Anyone else think of any? It probably is, you know, but we don't know. You know, like, again, I'm sure if you picked apart some songs, you'd probably find some,
I think we've got time for a couple more questions. Anybody else in the audience here?
So are you spending your time in Cardiff doing storytelling evenings in the pub?
Not the pubs where I drink. They wouldn't have it.
Different types of stories.
None I can repeat here. No, I'm not going on pubs, but I've done so many. You know, one thing they don't tell you when you want to be an author is, by the way, do you know you're going to be talking to, you know, in front of 100 people and all this? I didn't plan on that, you know. So I was very nervous for today, you know, but I'm getting more and more used to them. But so I've done many events all over Wales, and there's still, you know, new ones being lined up. And while we're on that, it was really highlighted to me how it's not just kids or people with a PhD in mythology who are into this, right? HMP Berwyn in Wrexham emailed me last week saying, Russ, a lot of our inmates ask us about Welsh folklore all the time. Can you come in? So on the 8th of May, I'm going to be there. Yeah. Smaller audience, but a lot more intimidating, I suppose. But it goes to show, doesn't it? Yeah. You know, that the clues in the name, folk tales, is that stories for people, and not, you know, you don't have to be a particular type of person or age. Yeah. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. Anyone else?
One more question, I think, before we finish up.
Have you got any plans to tell stories in the locations where they're set?
Well,
that would be a good tour.
Yeah, well, coincidentally I have, just because some of the events were at those places, you know. But in Caernarfon, they did ask me, would you like to do a walk-in tour? I said, what if it rains? Maybe we should. But just by coincidence, I think. Yeah, but there are. To be honest with you, a lot of the events I've done were where they took place. Yeah, which is terrifying, though. By the way, because they know the stories, you know, like back of it. Yeah. But why would you? Do you want me over?
There was a nice kind of spooky castle somewhere somewhere indoors so that the rain didn't matter.
Yeah.
It would be nice to go to an event with candlelight and so on and a few spooky stories.
Yeah, yes, no, yeah,
I can't
100%.
go to that.
Yeah, well, I was very, well, I don't know how to end this on, bad notes, but one of the people I interviewed, Dean Powell, has anyone heard of Dean Powell? It's quite well known, he's son in the Sydney Opera House, and what have you. So anyway, he's the first person I interviewed, and it was about Dr. William Price. And he used to run ghost tours around Llantrysant, and he did say, we could do all this together and all that. He said he passed away before the book came out. It's very sad, yeah. So he's the only one, that was the closest I got, yeah. The only other thing as well, when I interviewed the Mary Lloyd people in Llantrysant, they told me, our horse guy's getting on a bit. Do you fancy giving it a go? But he's not quite ready to retire. I'm not going to push him.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. I think you all agree we've had a fantastic session today and really enjoyable. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Russ, am ddod efo ni ac am dy holl straeon a dy frwdfrydedd a gobeithio nhw'n ni weld llyfr arall. We hope we'll see another book coming soon. Please give a round of applause.
Yeah, thank you.
Books are on sale outside, and I've got one suggestion, YouTube channel. I'd love, this is where you maybe
YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Tell stories on YouTube, share them that way, I think. Could be an audience for it.
People what's it, social media? Oh God, trying to get followers, when people say you need to do videos, and I said, oh God. Yeah, so I think I'll be forced into it. You'll see it one day.
But you're a writer, so keep writing.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if people have copies, because they did say I'm happy to sign any, but I haven't seen anyone bring one in. So
well, buy one outside and then you can sign those. So.
Yeah.
I've just got a couple of announcements. Next events here at the library, we've got guided tours of the No Welsh Art exhibition with Peter Lord, taking place on the first Wednesday of every month at 1 and 3 p.m, session in English and in Welsh. There's also a discussion on Patagonia and Wladfa on Wednesday the 2nd of April at 7 p.m. This is with Paul O'Leary and Lucy Taylor, who've written a book recently. All tickets are available on our website, so please have a look for the next events. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi.
Thank you, everyone.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.